Good morning, everybody. How is it? It is a Father's Day and it is TICPodcast Day. Hope everybody is having a good afternoon. It is about 12 o'clock, and just want to say happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. You keep it going. I've been kind of thinking, what do I want to talk about? I was wondering if I wanted to bring up Xbox again, but I will save that for another video. This time I realized I had watched every single Quentin Tarantino movie. And I thought, man, this guy is probably my favorite director. I have a lot of favorite directors, but consistently Quentin Tarantino is like the guy that I actually admire the most as a filmmaker. And now that I've seen all of his movies, I thought that would be a fun topic. That would be something that I could really sink my teeth into. Me and Rachel just saw Jackie Brown, and I had some things to say about it. It wasn't like a bad movie, but it felt like the weakest link, and it was like the movie that I felt like, man, this is like a rough draft of a better movie that Tarantino made. Like his first entry, but it was his third movie, which is weird because like his first two movies were better. But on to the point. So I'm gonna talk about each movie in order. I'm not gonna make a list or anything. I'm just gonna talk about them one by one. So I'll start off with Reservoir Dogs, the movie that started Tarantino. It was a really good movie, and it's really underrated. I mean, not underrated because it definitely gets all the praise it deserves, but it's like people don't talk like it's kind of like the first, like it's the most independent. That's the word I'm looking for. Reservoir Dogs, it's small, and it really does everything concise, and it kind of started the whole genre as we know it of like unconventional crime thrillers. So Reservoir Dogs is it started the whole non sequitur timeline thing, and it had a really good plot. And almost the whole movie is in this warehouse, and we just kind of like feel it's dialogue driven, you know. It's a fun movie, and it's got like some of the catchiest music out of a Tarantino movie, but I really felt like it was subdued, and it was really well acted. Like Harvey Keitel, he's just such a classic actor. I definitely need to watch more of his movies, but if you want to see Harvey Keitel in his prime, check out Taxi Driver. He plays just 2 seconds in the movie, but yeah, Harvey Keitel is a classic actor. And then on to our next big one, Pulp Fiction. I'm sure no one has heard of this movie. Pulp Fiction kind of like changed everything in movies. It made like independent movies come out like crazy. Everybody was talking about Pulp Fiction. It really was like a huge breakaway success. And it's probably it's in my like top 4, top 3 Tarantino movies. It's really good. I found it to be a really fun ride, and it's just so much energy going on in that movie. Like everything is just like electric in Pulp Fiction. It's got a really cool story, really cool characters, so many one-liners, like the scene with the Jules quoting the Bible. I think that scene is gonna be like legendary. Like we're gonna look back in 100 years and still quote that line. Um, and I think that as far as like mainstream movies, I think like Pulp Fiction is probably Tarantino's most easy to get into movie. Um, it's definitely up there for me. And then our next movie, Jackie Brown. Jackie Brown was interesting. Jackie Brown was like, kind of a love letter to, 70s movies. We get kind of like a throwback to The Graduate in the opening sequence. And, Pam Grier is the leading lady. She was like a queen of blaxploitation movies. And, this whole movie has like a 70s soundtrack to it. And, it's very dialogue driven, but I felt like the dialogue, it just seemed to go in places that like it could have been cut quicker. There was a lot of excess in that movie. It felt like the pacing wasn't that good. There was a lot of moments where I felt like the movie just didn't go anywhere and it sort of took its time and dragged out. And compared to Tarantino's other movies, they're pretty snappy. And this one just felt like it took forever for anything to happen. Like by the time we get to the main meat and potatoes of the story, it's like an hour into the movie. So I felt like, Jackie Brown was like a good movie, but it was still like, definitely not his best. It was like, if this was his first movie, I'd say it's a good first try, but it was his third movie after two really good ones. So it just kind of felt like, this could have been a good rough draft, but it wasn't a rough draft. It was like after two really good hits. Our next movie, I'm going to count both as one movie because that's how Tarantino counts it, and most fans count it. Kill Bill, Volume 1 and 2. To me, I think this is my favorite one because it's an epic. It feels like a grandiose kind of movie. We get two halves that are separate but feel both like together and separate at the same time. It's like a samurai version of Star Wars, if that makes sense. You have this character who's a hitman, and she basically almost dies, and she comes back, and she wants revenge. And we get this whole elaborate world of, like, hitmen and, Yakuza and all this other stuff. You really get wrapped up into like the underworld of this like heightened reality where you could take a sword on an airplane and you could learn like kung fu, and there's like this legendary sword maker who makes the best swords in the history of the world. And it's just, out of every Tarantino movie, this is the one I watch the most. This is the one I quote the most, and it's just so much fun. And Uma Thurman, she's probably the most badass woman in a movie. I think like out of any woman who's been in an action role, there's been a lot of really good ones. Like there's been Sigourney Weaver as Ellen Ripley, and there's been Kate Beckinsale as Celine. But I just feel like Uma Thurman has so much fun in this role, and she totally sells being a badass. I just find myself, every time I watch Kill Bill 1, I watch Kill Bill 2, and it's like a marathon. I like back to back watch them, and it's probably like my fourth favorite movie of all time. And then the movie after Kill Bill, both of them, was Death Proof. And this is like my second favorite Tarantino movie because it's underrated. It's really like, I think, kind of the reason it didn't get as much success, I think, is because it was right after Planet Terror. It was in a double feature called Grindhouse, and it was basically the second movie right after like this big zombie movie. Everybody loved this crowd-pleasing zombie movie, Planet Terror. And then, Death Proof is really dialogue driven. It's a slasher movie in the beginning. It has very Halloween 1978 vibe to it. Has same beats as, like, instead of it being the Shape, Michael Myers character, it's the car and Stuntman Mike, and it has a very like boogeyman vibe to it. Totally dig it, with lots and lots of awesome music and badass chicks. Like the chicks are cool. The dialogue really is fun in Death Proof. Like it's very entertaining to see these chicks just have fun, just hanging out. And then the second half of the movie is a gigantic 20-minute car chase, and it's real. It's a real car chase with real stunts, and Zoe Bell is actually on the hood of that car holding for dear life without any safety belts or anything. It's still one of my favorite car movies. And I think that's the thing. Like, people didn't understand that it was like a throwback to like these old movies that used to come out. Like it was a love letter to Gone in 60 Seconds, and it was a love letter to Halloween. And not just for the nostalgia, but I think it actually holds its own as a good movie. Kurt Russell, just so much fun in that role. I think, like, even though he was awesome in The Thing and Big Trouble in Little China and Escape from New York, I think Stuntman Mike is his best role ever. He just kills it in that movie. And I would like to buy that jacket, the Icy Hot jacket. Super cool jacket. Honestly, like, I think Death Proof is just, it's criminally underrated. Totally love that movie. Okay. So now we move into the second chapter of Tarantino's movies, the new phase. Because after the flop of Death Proof, Tarantino kind of like took a step back, and he kind of polished his filmmaking and kind of like toned everything down. And we got like a almost different version of Tarantino. And we got Inglourious Bastards. And, it's a lot more refined and subdued. And we got Christoph Waltz as like one of his best roles. He plays this absolute piece of shit called the Jew Hunter, and he just steals every scene he's in. All the actors are doing awesome. Michael Fassbender he also steals the show. Michael Myers makes a cameo, and I laughed my ass off when I saw him. It was so good to see Michael Myers back. It's a great thriller, but it's funny and it's dramatic and it's suspenseful. It's a really good, tight movie. I've only seen it a few times, but I know, because I can remember it, that it was just a fun movie. And what we get next is, I think, Tarantino's most magnum opus movie. It's a love letter to spaghetti westerns. It's called Django Unchained, reference to the original 1966 Django movie with Franco Nero. And it is another Christoph Waltz movie, except Christoph Waltz is like the good guy. And, Django Unchained feels a lot like, a love letter to The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, Django, Once Upon a Time in the West, and, just really has like this deep love for spaghetti westerns. The music, the camera angles, the zooms, like everything you can really pick apart, like Sergio Corbucci and Sergio Leone, and the music is ripped straight from these old classic spaghetti westerns. And the structure of the movie is like a 3-act structure. Like, it is like a grandiose epic, and I every time I watch Django Unchained, I'm like hooked. It's I want to say it's my favorite because for a long time it was. But I guess I just like old Tarantino more. But out of the new Tarantino stuff, Django Unchained is just his like his magnum opus. Great acting. Nobody misses a beat. Everybody is just on point. Leonardo DiCaprio is just the one of his best villains. I have nothing negative to say about Django Unchained other than I just prefer his older stuff. And then after Django Unchained, we get The Hateful Eight. And I was kind of let down by this movie. I think Tarantino was let down by this movie because he released an extended cut of the movie that had a couple minutes worth of footage because he had to cut corners for length and do kind of like they're in the suspense part. There's these plot holes, and he did a narration of some of the plot holes to kind of wrap up the story. And it's a mystery, and it reminds me a lot of the movie Clue, where it's kind of like a who done it. There's like some kind of murder going on, and it's just 8 people in a room, and we don't know what happened between they're trapped in this little, like, it's not really a hotel, but it's kind of like this small little village thing. They're stuck in a room, and it's all suspense. I've only seen it like 2 times, but I'm sure I would enjoy it more on my next couple watches. But I did find it that the Samuel L. Jackson performance was one of the best. And then we get to Once Upon a Time in the West. Now, Once Upon a Time in the West is interesting. It's like it's probably the best looking Tarantino movie, and it feels great to watch. It's a fun movie, and it has tons and tons of Easter eggs if you know Hollywood stuff. Like, it's full of it. Like, you can geek out on that movie. There's tons of references. They make fun of people. Bruce Lee, like that scene with Bruce Lee, I crack the fuck up whenever I watch that scene. And like they made a lot of references to like Steve McQueen and Sharon Tate, and they talked a lot about how westerns were dying, and kind of like spaghetti westerns brought back. And I felt like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was a good movie, but at the same time I felt like by the end of the movie it just sort of ends. And I felt like, wait a minute, so like that's the ending, like, and then you kind of want more, but at the same time you felt like, what? I don't get what this story was about. Like, I mean, I guess the whole point of the movie was to kind of experience just what it was like back then, but I still feel kind of like I need to rewatch it because I've only seen it in the theater. And I just felt like Once Upon a Time in the Hollywood was kind of like, it was a little overhyped, It was a great movie, but it wasn't my favorite. And I think Tarantino kind of went overboard with like the script, because we got a lot of scenes that just felt disconnected. And, really good acting, really good vibes, but it just didn't seem to go anywhere. And then, Tarantino has been involved in producing and like script writing with tons of stuff. He's not just making his own stuff. He's been involved in tons of other movies. And his influence has inspired tons of writers and filmmakers today. I just wanted to blab about him because I feel like as a director, he's a really good director. He takes cues from other people. He knows how to take a scene from someone else's movie and make it his own. He doesn't plagiarize, but he also does take a lot of cues. And I do that myself. I learned how to draw by drawing like other people's artwork. And I just feel like if there was one filmmaker I could watch, and that was the only filmmaker I could watch, probably Quentin Tarantino is my favorite director. There's better directors than him, but I don't think they have the track record that Tarantino has. I mean, like, honestly, even Tarantino's worst movie is still good. He hasn't made, in my opinion, a bad movie, and even his worst movie is still good. So, yeah, I just wanted to blab and thank you for listening to my Tarantino retrospective. I'll see you later.